Well, my name is Ray Hebert. I'm the senior product manager at Dell for the change management portfolio products, which is all the updates related things, from our dupe infrastructure to our related catalogs to our tools that we can use to manage and deploy. And one of the things that we pride ourselves here at Dell is our ability to be flexible. And I actually had a different set of discussion points that I wanted to have with you today, but based upon the interaction that we've had over the last few hours, I've decided to pivot and go in a little bit different direction. So instead, what I want to do is, talk about one or a couple of the major points that IT administrators have, because any good data center security plan really needs to include, keeping your BIOS drivers and firmware up to date. And as part of that plan, you need to be able to find those BIOS drivers and firmware packages, and gather them up and then put them into a deployment package. But as important as that is, you also need to be able to be notified when new stuff becomes available, so that you're not always having to go out there and look for things. So with that in mind, what I'll do is spend my time going over a product that we've had for a number of years called Dell Repository Manager. And its sole purpose in life is to be able to identify, manage, package updates for you to be used by all of our different consoles or tools inside of Dell. So looking at it, identify and gather, one of the things that we talked about, I think a good bit, today is this defining a baseline of what's right for your data center, and not because it may not always be the latest and greatest from a Dell, or your maintenance schedule may be different than somebody else's, or when Dell comes out with stuff. So we want to allow you to have that flexibility. But once you've identified and gathered updates, the next thing that you have to do is package them in a format that you can use. And if you're using one of our Dell tools, then having what's called a catalog plus the content is what OpenManage Enterprise is going to take advantage of, or our integrations with VMware vCenter, or our integration with Microsoft System Center. All are going to consume that type of deal. But we also realize that there's a whole host of other deployment packages that we can provide, such as bootable ISOs, or if you've got novice users, server update utilities and other types of things out there. So let me what I'm going to end up doing is doing sort of a live demo of it. But within Repository Manager, how we sort of manage updates is, at the component level, is the physical Dell update package, the BIOS file, the networking card, firmware, and those types of things. Then we take all of those and we build bundles for each platform. So your R740 will have the bundle of all the updates that are applicable for it, and your R640 and your R630 and et cetera. And then we elevate that one step further up into the data center level, which is where a repository exists. And a repository is just a group of bundles. So a repository could have a single bundle inside of it. A repository could have 100 bundles inside of it. So just to give you an idea of how it is that we sort of manage these things. So let me jump over and just run repository manager, and hopefully it will come up. And is there a reason why we're not seeing? Try duplicate. There we go. So repository manager is our dedicated focus tool on updates management, and it's fairly simple to use, and we've done some extremely valuable things with it. Now, repository manager has been around since 2009. Early this year, in 2018, we did a major refresh of repository manager. So now we have both a Windows and a Linux version that is identical.
Is it deployed in a OVA or OVF?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it can be deployed in an OVA and OVM, no problem at all.
So is it packaged that way when I?
No, not in the initial version of it, but we will look at bringing it out in an OVA, OVM, potentially even a Docker, type of packaging.
Can this be? Is this a repo just for your firmware and so forth, or can this be a repo for VMware Update Manager? Could it be a repo used by WSUS? Could it be a repo used by Red Hat? Could I make it my one repo for everything?
Today it is a repo for Dell BIOS drivers and firmware, but there's no reason why I can't extend it, or the product cannot be extended in the future to be a repo of repos, to integrate in with a third party's repository. At this time, no, but that's but that is something that we've thought about, and we've made sure that when we developed the product, we did not do anything that would make that a difficult thing for us to do in the future at the right time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, one of the strengths of Repository Manager is its ability to get you down to the granular level of what updates are important to you. And I just want to just do a quick build a new repository. And we're just going to call this an R740, and you'll see why in a minute. And I'm just going to make a manual one. So first I'll just come in, select my line of business, which is PowerEdge. Come down, select my R740, select Save. Come in, select my operating systems. And in this case, I'm using Windows 64 4-bit OSs, so I want to grab those. You can see that we can now come down and granularly filter down, and this is important on the driver level, because drivers are traditionally OS specific. So if I wanted to make sure that only the drivers for Windows Server 2016 were inside that repository, it'd be easy to do. Or if I wanted to also include 2012 R2, I could do that as well. And then the last step in the manual repository deal, and I want to emphasize that because I'm going to show you next sort of how I'm going to do this exact same thing in a more automated fashion, which is now I can come down to my component types, firmware, BIOS, and drivers. And now I'm presented back with a high level of all the different device driver categories that are available. So if I really wanted to have a very specific thing, if I wanted to have just BIOS and IDRAC inside this repository, you just select those two. Or if I wanted to have them all, just select all. And just hit save and hit add. Now you'll see that a new repository has been created for an R740 that has all these different thingamajigs inside of it, all these different update packages. So there's over 120 updates packages that are applicable to an R740. So that's a lot. So how can we help you to get down to exactly what it is that you want to do? And that's where our integrations can help us. And with our integrations, we can link directly to one of our Dell tools. In this case, either a specific IDRAC or OpenManage Essentials. And when the release version of OpenManage Enterprise comes out, we'll be able to connect directly into it. We have integrations with VMware vCenter, which we can connect to be able to pull an inventory file, as well as a whole bunch of other things if there's a RESTful API that we can attach to. But let me just...
I'm sorry, I'm confused. This seems backwards.
Sure.
I would expect it just to be a repo.
Yeah.
And Dell OpenManage is the one that queries it and hooks up everything. Having this do all that heavy lifting doesn't seem interesting to me.
Okay.
In fact, I think it just seems backwards because all my logic and all my knowledge is inside of OpenManage.
Right, inside of OpenManage Enterprise. And that's
or
why...
even Essentials. I mean, I have
or,
a list
or
of
Essentials.
I have lists of things already there. I want to basically say, give me a list of the servers that need to be upgraded.
Yeah.
Let me see if the repo has anything for it. Hook them together and go.
Right.
But you just said, I got to know the step here seems like go and find the server, go and find the operating system, go and find this, go and find that.
Well,
and I don't have the time to do that.
And that's
the
where,
knowledge.
And that's where the integrations come in. So I showed you the first thing, which was the very manual approach, which gives you all the flexibility of making whatever choices. So if I wanted to do this with, sure.
This tool can be used as standalone, so you select what you want, or combine it with a console. So what was showing is as standalone. Basically, you don't combine it with a console. So you select the 740, you select the BIOS, you select what you need. But then when you use to manage your data center, a console, it is integrated with a console and provides this service underneath the hood, this service of selecting and creating a bundle or a catalog.
Right.
That is why, there are options that you can combine it with a console or use standalone. Make sense?
I would say that this would be an adjunct to an existing management product instead of having yet another management product that I have to figure out how to use.
So I guess
Yeah.
the follow-on to that, since it's broken out as a separate
Right.
in a separate app, and it has its own database, it has its own capabilities, what are the integrations beyond Dell OpenManage solutions?
Yeah. Today our integrations are within the Dell portfolio of products. Mm-hmm. We will look at the future of going outside of the OpenManage world. And
So what what I haven't heard so far in all the
Yeah.
conversations has been like big picture stuff. Without, I'm sure you guys partner with CMDBs,
Right.
with service management companies in general. But the idea is that, you know what, I have this automation workflow. And this automation workflow, one of the things that we talk about a lot is hybrid infrastructure, where today this Dell server is a Exchange something node,
Right.
and tomorrow it needs to be a VMware vSphere host. The next day it needs to be a Hyper-V host. The next day it needs to be a Docker container host.
Right.
How does all of your products help with that level of automation? We've been pretty far into the weeds, and I haven't seen kind of like that big picture story of how Dell OpenManage helps me with a modern data center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can help, and I've been watching your Twitter conversation. And yeah, leave it on. Manoj said my voice is loud enough, but not across the internet. Yeah, I noticed your chat. I think that's a fair question. I think it's a fair comment because we have been talking about basic tool sets that help you integrate in the way that you need. I think one comment that I saw and is important to kind of put on the table is, hey, there'd be a significant investment up front into getting onto a vendor's tool set. I would say it a little bit differently. I think a lot of customer questions we get is, hey, I want to make sure I've got 2 vendors in my data center. Or I want to understand how to do XYZ on top of a PowerEdge platform. And they need the tools to kind of plumb that last mile. And I think those are some of the tools you're seeing here is how do I make sure every server's got to be updated, every server's got to be configured to give a customer the ultimate flexibility. The reason they have servers in their data center is how do I go, build a powerful solution that they own and have control over. And so building on top of that, when you look at the big picture, you say, well, more and more things are becoming a server. I made a joke earlier that, hey, somebody said, I haven't touched a PowerEdge server in years. Well, you probably have touched a server built maybe as an HCI solution or built as something bigger than that or packaged bigger than that. Underneath a lot of those solutions is why we use the word bedrock when we launched 14G. Underneath those solutions are these tool sets making it happen. We don't want to force a big Uber console into a customer's environment to get all these things done. I agree there's a trade-off in simplification, and you can do a lot of things there, but we want to make the API directly to the server. That's why we invest a lot in IDRAC RESTful API capabilities, making sure that you can fully automate server tasks directly to the server so that we can integrate those with the right things, making sure that we've got a robust console for people that want our console, and like Kevin said at the beginning, making sure we've got integrations with a partner like a VMware or a Microsoft.
And there's 2 different ways to looking at that bedrock. Now I've got mine on, right? So 2 different ways to look at it. There's the buy environment, right? So Dell will sell a VxRail, software-defined storage, through a vSAN type of environment that has VxRail Manager on it. VxRail Manager on the underneath side is calling into IDRAC. It's calling into our tools. We don't market it that way. There's another set of customers that are out there doing the build type of environment. This is where I was talking about why I said, stay tuned. There will be some things we're doing with our OpenManage integration with VMware vCenter around vSAN to help those customers that are building out that software-defined data center on their own, right? So you remember, there's different knowledge bases, different experience levels that customers have out there.
Yeah, so
I need to be able to fit.
It would have
both
been
needs.
nice to have seen a slide or a presentation that kind of broke that down. Because what I'm trying to understand from, this is a lot of the stuff you guys have showed from a practical, how do I get stuff done? Low level, I'm a data center engineer, I'm a data center manager, I need to get stuff done.
Yep.
From architecture, I have Nutanix, HPE, all these service management companies coming at me and saying, you know what, we need to be the CMDB of CMDBs. We need to be the focal point. One of my previous CIOs called it the ERP of the data center. How do you guys play into that stack? Or is Dell stepping up and saying, hey, you know what? We want to be the thought leader in how you automate a data center, or we want to be the low-level command line interface to these components of your data center. I don't understand that story and where you guys fit in the market.
There's kind of two ways, right? We want these vendors that are building their solutions on Dell to take advantage of a lot of the things you guys saw today, right? All of that automation, getting people the XC platform that we have and what we're able to do with the XC platform, and having people take into account the APIs, the automation, the updates, and pieces like that. Let me ask you this. Have you heard anybody else in the industry talking about lockdown mode? Anybody else? Anybody else in the industry talking about putting their servers in lockdown mode? We talked about it. Why did we put this in place? Because we realize a software-defined data center is going to have servers in there that are no longer servers, right? Put that in lockdown mode. I don't want to have somebody taking a tool and having it go ahead and modifying that infrastructure now, and it broke something. Have you heard of anybody else? So again, I think we do have some thought leadership that we're driving here. I can't give you the full picture yet because again, we're still integrating with EMC and some of the things that we are doing, right? You mentioned data protection, you mentioned a lot of different, there's still that education process to educate our counterparts that we have that we've merged together with to understand what we're doing. That takes a little bit of time for them to see that value. The other thing is, I will ask again, OpenManage Enterprise. How many other consoles out there do you know that will automatically discover a vSAN environment? VMware's vCenter will discover it after you've built it. It knows about it. We will have a solution where you take OpenManage Enterprise, you deploy it, it will automatically identify a VxRail.
I guess
Right.
what we're looking for is, you gave us a lot of pieces, parts.
Yeah.
And I like that. I mean, I'm a gearhead, I don't mind pieces, parts. But I'm also a guy that has to run a data center or an enterprise.
Yes.
I want to know, I mean, the repo, great.
Yeah.
It's a piece.
Yep.
That's a part.
Yeah.
But I want to see the overarching picture.
Okay.
Because when I deploy a management solution, I'm not looking at it as, oh, that's going to allow me to manage that one machine over there. No, it's going to allow me to manage 10,000 machines.
Yeah, Ed, to your point, we've talked about this in the past. Like
Yeah.
when VMware first came out with their SDDC vision,
Yeah.
I was like, that's ridiculous. You can't buy that today. But it was a good thing to aim for. And it would be great if Dell put out this is the Dell automated data station vision. Yeah, there's missing parts, but this is what we're working towards. This is the business value. So VMware's vision wasn't a technology vision as much as it was a business vision. I don't see Dell's business vision at the end. So it's hard for me as an enterprise architect to wrap my head around why some of this stuff is important.
Good feedback, and I think what we need to do again is if we have an opportunity to do something like this again, a session, right? Because again, what we were looking at was how do we do and provide a systems management automation session,
Yeah.
right? So again, maybe if we would have thought through some of this, we could have gone through with that high-level strategy portion before we got into those pieces. I guess we took the other approach. Let's approach it from the bottom up with here's all the tools we have, right? There is discussions and things going on as far as how we integrate all those pieces into the various pieces when you start looking at a software-defined data center, because there's a lot of pieces, right? There's HCI, converged infrastructure. There's everything you can start thinking about out there, and how do we plan to manage all of those pieces?
We appreciate it. That's a hard call when you're talking to a technical audience for the first time who've told you we are a technical audience. So you don't want to bore us with business strategy.
Well, and that's kind of, yeah,
We
some of the things
appreciate
that
it.
I was thinking about. Again, I could talk for 4 hours just on the technology pieces as opposed
But
to.
I'm looking from a technology architecture perspective is like, give me that map of what you have and how it all fits together and what's integrated with what. Because I'm looking for, if I'm going to buy something, I want to look for it to be as integrated as possible, not just down at the server level, but with each other and with other products that I have that may be from your portfolio or others. So a lot more plug-in capability, a lot more integration capability would make my life easier.
Yeah. So a couple of comments from my side on this, and I agree we should have given a more strategic overarching view. However, I think that OpenManage Enterprise represent a little bit that glue we are talking about, because that is going to be, in the early future, the element that will plug in and have a plug-in inside that will allow, from a vCenter GUI or a System Center GUI or whatever, to leverage the engine capability of the core in order to address all the issue, all of the requirement at the hardware side. So, in our vision, OpenManage Enterprise is that centerpiece. However, if we want to think about the data center, and this is a question for you, where a single vendor is providing a console, infrastructure console, that is heterogeneous and encompassing all the servers and all of the hardware in the data center, will that ever exist, or you will see that it is going to be yeah.
If it doesn't end up, so A, that's what we want to exist.
That is
B,
everybody.
if it doesn't end up existing, it will be you and your competitors in the server market that stop it from happening. That you will, there is nothing on the user side that's going to say, well, we want this specifically from this vendor and we don't want it to talk to anything else. The only reason multi-vendor things break down is vendors start protecting their turf.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with your point of view. My point is, how could you preserve differentiation from a hardware vendor if everything is going to be at the same level? So let's say Redfish. Redfish will be a baseline that we hope will create the first step toward that direction. So that we can manage from our console somebody else's console, okay? Somebody else's hardware, sorry. But what if this somebody else is putting some differentiation there, so is going to extend the schema of a Redfish, and I will not be able to take advantage of that. So it's going to be very tough to imagine that the server vendor will not be differentiating their product so that everybody else can manage. So
Well,
it's
in the
an interesting point,
No,
and
but
we
in
would like to go
management
there.
side, we don't want, in the management side,
it
we
is-
don't want
Sorry.
in the management side, we don't want differentiation. You differentiate yourself at the hardware level. You differentiate yourself at the IDRAC level and all that. That's great. But when it comes down to managing something, I want to be able to use a single interface across my entire data center to manage everything. And you know what? That's not where I want differentiation. I want it just to work.
Yeah, and I agree, but we believe that that is going to be something that maybe a third-party management console like vCenter or like System Center, the people that
Like BMC.
Yes.
like BMC software, like CA,
Because System Center and vCenter are designed,
I agree.
you know, they're centric to where they're centric.
I agree. So is it the people that is looking at the application, that is looking then at the plugins that are entering in order to manage the hardware, that have the strategy in order to be heterogeneous. So I think that we need to look at there rather than looking at the infrastructure heterogeneous console, because that is going.
Look at the storage side of the house and how massively unsuccessful SMIS has been. And you don't want to fall down that rat hole. Because I understand you want to differentiate your servers. You differentiate your servers like Chevrolet differentiated cars in 1957. We have bigger tail fins. The core product is not terribly differentiated. And so if you annoy me by saying we are going to only allow us to be managed by our management tool, I may just decide the next time I buy servers.
Sorry. So maybe I skipped a groove here or missed something. I thought we went over how we brought Redfish forward, led that as an industry definition to replace IPMI, made it something that our technologists get on the phone with our competitors' technologists and spend a significant amount of time.
It looks like you're right on the right path
Spend
now.
a significant amount of time working the standard, working the data model, contributing things back to the community and making them open so that we can have an API. We have a RESTful API that did not exist before Redfish. We built it on top of Redfish. right? It is 100% Redfish compliant. We have conversations just this week in the hallway about, hey, we noticed competitor X and competitor Y did this little subtlety inside their Redfish API. We're doing the subtlety maybe this way. How can we come to a common ground? That's literally a conversation that I had this week in the hallway. So to say that we're trying to drive some sort of like lock-in,
I'm not.
I can't- I'm
I'm
sorry,
not
I don't mean to-
accusing you of that.
okay.
But the question a couple of minutes ago was, how do we differentiate? And the answer is you don't differentiate by limiting any management function to your console. That is not the right way to differentiate. That's what I'm saying.
And I would agree with that.
I guess my point was just that there will be pieces of hardware, so at the hardware level, that there will be differentiation there, that I don't know if my console that is from another vendor, Dell managing somebody else, if they will let me see that differentiation that they put there. That is my point.
If Dell adds some piece of hardware to the server that moves it beyond the commodity is not quite the right word, but the standard,
Correct.
I don't fully expect that Cisco or HPE will support managing that.
That is what I was saying.
But what I really want is for BMC or somebody like BMC or some open source group
Absolutely.
to come up with something that can support your hardware as well as you do.
Absolutely. That is exactly our policy. That is why you have seen the integration there with BMC Soft.
I haven't seen anything that
So
leads
to
me
get-
to believe you're building those walls. But I just want to reinforce those walls are bad things.
No, and I didn't mention it. The BMC software integration that's up there, Dell didn't build it. Guess who built it? BMC.
Yeah.
So again, we are not trying to hide anything we're doing. I think there is an opportunity, if you look at that XML profile that we built out, that hasn't been defined by Redfish yet, how to do that. We did create a REST API because we had customers saying, hey, I love the ability that I have one file that I can do and deploy the entire stack. And we, it's there. If we have to change that when the standard gets kind of defined, we believe it's pretty close to everything that is
Yeah,
being
that's
defined.
1.0, 1.0
We'll
means
move it to be
limited.
fully compliant. But so again, I think where we feel we can differentiate is, you said it, inside IDRAC. It's not, Redfish itself is a API. It's you and I talking English, right? Something in our head is actually translating and making sure, and then there's an action that I can go and take. The hard part is the actionability that is happening more in the IDRAC side of the house and what everybody else has to do for the different pieces, right?
Yeah, and to that note, those of us who have experience on older Dell servers or servers from older servers from other vendors, I've been looking at the IDRAC demonstration going, wow, it's fast enough. That's really impressive. Because
Yes.
it's always been terribly slow. And, I mean, I run a small lab and my office is right outside the data center, and it is frequently easier to stand up and walk in and use the KVM than connect to the remote console.
And if we had never made changes to the way Lifecycle Controller operated on our systems in 11G, we would never have had the success we have had, right? It was slow. Just doing the inventory collection on that system would take 2.5 minutes at boot up time. It takes less than 5 seconds now. So we recognized, we listened, and everything was built off of proper inventory taking place from an out-of-band perspective as that system was booting. Some of the other, and again, over the lifetime of what we've been doing, we continue to evolve what it has been able to do. We will continue to evolve more and more, but we will conform to any standards. We've heard it loud and clear. Can you go and make OpenManage Enterprise manage other third-party servers? First thing to happen is, why not have my engineering team, hint, go off and do a POC. Let's do a proof of concept. Let's throw a Supermicro out there. Let's throw some other vendors out there who claim Redfish compatibility. Let's see what we can get. So again, I'm not disagreeing that we shouldn't be going down that path. The panacea of a single pane of glass That's hard and good
Well,
in the long run.
we have rephrased single pane of glass into single glass of pain.
Yes.
And then, and then shortened that to Schlimovitz, because that stuff will eat right through the table.
Okay.
Okay.
We can continue this when
Yeah.
I get up to do closing remarks too.
Yeah, it's always fun having a management team that is so incredibly passionate about our our products, and that's part of the reason why. Now, one of the observations that was brought up a few minutes ago was that in the manual approach to creating a repository, there was a lot of decisions that needed to be made, from selecting the server to selecting the operating systems to the other things. And that's still, and that flexibility to get to that level is still important, because there's going to be customers that want that level of control. But how I can integrate in to filter everything down to just the things that you're interested in, which is what's applicable inside my data center. And I'm just going to use a straight IDRAC integration here. But this is the same thing that you would get if you integrated in with OpenManage Essentials, or in the future OpenManage Enterprise, or any of our integrations with VMware or System Center. And it's just a matter of making a connection and having it go in, identify what it's connected to, and create. So you notice that in the manual repository, without any filtering down, I've got over 100 different things that I can choose from. If I come in and I look at just what I care about, and this is in reality what, when you go into a server, I mean, I've got what, 4, 5, 9 or 10 things that are updatable inside of my data center. And that's all I really care about. And that's where we want to use our integration capability to help you to narrow the scope down to really what's important to you, and not have to deal with the entire universe. And that helps us in a couple of ways. One is, at some point in time, you have to get these physical files down to your data center in order to be able to create something. So by integrating in, and narrowing, your scope of what you're looking at, sort of helps us out there. So, and I know that I've only got a couple minutes left, and I would like to say that everything that I'm showing you now also has an API equivalent for a command line interface.
Right, you're showing us all of this configuration from
Right.
being done inside the repository manager. Can
Yeah.
it be done on the other side? Can I use OpenManage itself to set up these repositories that we're at?
OpenManage Enterprise.
OME to drive into this?
So we've been having some discussions about this on Twitter,
Yeah.
and generally the response that I've seen so far is it's not yet, but it's
Yeah.
a good
Roadmap
idea.
item.
Let's look
Yeah,
into.
yeah.
Right. So,
Enterprise, but is already
Right.
in Essentials. So the current console has that, but the future
Yeah.
integration with OpenManage Enterprise
Yeah.
is about to come.
but if I were to look at this, and just, deselect everything. So then I can take this and export this to a SharePoint site, or any site that I have access to. Just say open and then click export. And what that's doing now is creating a catalog and moving the physical files from Dell.com to your local location, so that your OpenManage Enterprise or IDRAC or any of your other tools now are pointing to a local location for that. So it's inside of your firewall. And it's just the things that you want. You know, and then the last thing I'll say before I hand it back over to Kevin for closing is that once you've defined a repository, you're going to want to know when new updates are available. So again, you know, the ability to schedule a search for new updates. I particularly like doing mine weekly, and I prefer doing them on Wednesdays. Just my own personal preference. And if I want to get an email notification that tells me, hey, Dell just released a new BIOS for my R740. You know, this is it. It's now in your repository. Here's some information about it. You know, so that you can make a decision as to if that's something that's of interest to you and that you need to start planning on deploying out. So with that, you know, that's sort of the basics of Repository Manager. I'm sort of glad that, not glad, but I enjoyed the discussion that went on. I think there's obviously many ways that this product and other products that we have can be enhanced to fit more into what I would call an open type of world. You know, and since I do have just a couple minutes left, and I know Kevin is making his way up, you know, one of the things that we've done, you know, in building our CLI capabilities is to make sure that they can be integrated into these open source automation tools like Ansible and Puppet and Chef to help sort of automate the entire, you know, I guess infrastructure management or or infrastructure deployment, you know, functionality of it.